want to bring it this way.
Okay, good morning, please. I'll just make a very brief presentation on this. This won't take very long. And we just give you the very highlights of what an NREN is. My name is Benjamin Eshun. Sorry, next one. Okay. So now, this was the question that obviously rose the attention yesterday. And I wanted to emphasize on the disparities and the high cost of internet related, and then the pricing between the developed and underdeveloped countries. Okay, so from the graph, you see that when you take sorry. Okay, so all right, from the from the table that you saw, it's basically, okay. Yes, so it's showing there's a huge disparity between what a typical university in Africa has versus what the audio VGA cable. Okay. So then that cuts down my time more, so let me just be very brief and I'm going to details. Now, if you take the graph on the blue, if you compare the two between the developing and developed countries, a typical university in our part of in Africa has that type of bandwidth per campus, whilst its equivalent in the other developed world has the equivalent type of in proportional rate. I don't want to give figures to know. But what is surprising is that when it comes to pricing, we pay almost 5 times more than, or 6 times more than what they get for that same amount of small bandwidth compared to what they pay for the huge bandwidth. So this is showing that we have a serious problem when it comes to the amount of access and the type of resources that institutions have in order to get internet access. Now the question is, how do we resolve this? And how come there's this huge disparity and what makes it so? Now, what is happening is that most countries now treat their research connectivity issues for tertiary education by forming what they call an NREN. And what an NREN basically is simply, it is a network, it's an organization set up by tertiary and research institutions in order to provide a physical national network to collaborate and other things. And it's really a network of the investing networks. So they take the national pressure into mind and build a national network to ensure that institutions can benefit from the economies of scale of having such high-speed networks. And like I said earlier on, take it for the World Bank, you realize that most countries in blue that have that type of pricing that we've been talking about are the ones in green. And those in yellow and in gray are now in the phases of trying to develop their own NRENs. So if you compare the internet pricing at those countries, you realize that they far exceed those which are, what do you call it, in that part of the world, which are in yellow and green. Yellow and gray, sorry. Okay, so this is typically how an NREN is made up, but I'll glance over it by institutions coming together to form a national network and their forth. And this shows how, another bird's eye picture of how there are various regional networks in other parts of the world. And in Africa, as some of you might be aware of, there are 3 regional networks: the Ubuntu Alliance, WACREN, and ASREN. And then they are in the forms of the various stages of forming the NRENs in the various countries. Now, what is surprising is that we in Africa, like I said, the map is not very clear, but you realize that a lot of the countries are still in the emerging states trying to form their national research education networks. So those in blue and that. But there's been a very slow development on the continent because if you compare the same map over more than 10 or 5 years ago, we realize that those countries that are still in the NREN development stage are still there, and those that have always been the same.
Is it possible that you speak a bit slowly?
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I've been told I'm talking too fast. So please let me know when I'm talking too fast. Okay. Sorry. I'll slow down a little bit. Sorry. Okay. Now, why do you, as I said, why do we need to form an NREN, or why do you need to form an NREN in your country? And the points are very simple. Basically, to address the very expensive internet access to tertiary and research institutions within the country, and to address the poor and unreliable networks, to also take care of the high cost of campus connectivity to institutions located in underserved or underserved communities within the country, and then because primarily there's a lack of a national network to provide value-added services for the national higher education community. And lastly, and mostly, is the inability for the tertiary and research institutions within the country to collaborate with other institutions locally and internationally. So it tends to tackle all the pillars of the problem by, first of all, tackling the very expensive and very poor and reliable networks, and then all other relations. And how is it done? Basically, it's done by, very simply, using the economies of scale to build and share high-speed networks. What it means is that rather than each institution or university or organization dealing with a commercial provider to negotiate its rates and capacity, the NREN by itself does so on a national perspective, and then therefore gets a much bigger value for money in doing so. And then I'll show you how it's done briefly. Also, to contribute to international institutional collaboration for research and human networking, and also be able to share resources. Time will not permit, so I'm trying to cut this short. I'll go into detail maybe in the explanation. Okay, and then also to promote, these slides will be available for those that want to, so I'll go on. And also promote links between the academic research community and the community and other government and international agencies. Now, I want to get to what are the basic pillars of what an NREN needs to do. And I know there are countries here that have NRENs within their country. They are now, and as you saw, they are now also being established, but a study done and to know what are the various four pillars that you need to have to ensure that within your country, once you have this, you are able to then be able to get to the pricing that you want. First of all, and foremost, it must be an open membership. That means that it must be open to all the tertiary and research institutions within the country, and then they're able to join with the same conditions. So it's not for public investees, private investees, or tertiary or polytechnics or whatever. Because you are using the economies of scale, so the bigger the number, the cheaper it is for everybody. Whether it's government that's providing the funding or private that's providing the funding, the more money, the more value you get for the money you spend is better for everybody, irrespective of where the source is coming from. So then it must have a governance structure that is autonomous from any of the existing higher educational bodies, because it's in to serve the needs of its members. And the members are the members of the NREN. So once it is basically poised to serve the needs of the members. The governance structure is very important. Its own constitution, and obviously it cannot be just in isolation, so it requires the endorsement of the government or of the country through the appropriate ministry or ministries, as may be. And its board is best when it's an expert-based board, implying that the individuals on the board are there to serve the purpose of the objective of the organization. When you tend to have a representational board, it tends to bring in the interest of that appointing board onto the board, and therefore it tends to lose focus to what the NREN itself is supposed to achieve. And then, of course, must have its own administrative and financial policy and technical management policies. Then a critical factor is that also that it must have its own full-time staff who are geared to making sure that the service and products are delivered paid. So it mustn't be part-time staff working for a university, working for a government agency, or any other organization like that. It's very critical that that happens. And then now, what some countries do, or what somebody is doing, is that they are trying to build a national telco agnostic network, which means that you don't want to rely on one particular telco within the country, because that tends to have all your eggs in one basket. But rather, you tend to want to make sure that you work with all, or those that are willing telecommunication companies within the country, and then sign long-term arrangements with them for the infrastructure. So more or less, leasing your own infrastructure from them over a 10 to 15-year period tends to be very cheap. That is what with the RRU means. So because the internet is really not going away. So the more you make long-term investments towards securing those links, the cheaper it is on a day-to-day basis. And also try and cover the largest country, and then serving each institution with at least 2 independent telcos. What happens is when you do this, first of all, you reduce the reliance on one particular telco. You make sure that in the areas where the one telco has the strength, you are able to capitalize on that, and areas that is not, you're able to do that. And then the key thing is that how this thing is paid for is simple, is that normally it's best developed by, there's a capex cost in laying fiber to connect institutions, servers, long-term agreements. These things are best done from external funding to make sure that these one-time costs are taken care of by the government or developed partners. And then the operational expenses for the day-to-day management of the NREN itself is able to take care of the running costs. Now, this is a typical example of what study that is following this method, what pricing can be done, what pricing can be reduced to. Now, 155 meg is the standard bench of how most institutions within the country connect. That's 155 meg per second. And then normally it's done in factors like that. Current pricing it's around $6,000 per month for those that are dealing directly with the telco. Now, when you use the factors I've explained before, the independent board, taking care of the capex and separating the capex from the opex and other operational costs, you realize that within the first year of operation, you can drop it down to about $2,500 per month. And by the second year, you'll be looking at $600 per month. And then by the third year forwards, it's close to about $300 or $400 per month for the same amount of capacity. This is because as and when more institutions are joining, and as and when you're building your backbone infrastructure, the backbone is leasing the capacity of the telcos, so they have greater capacity on the telcos, and then buying bulk internet access from providers. You're able to bring it down systematically, because each time you're signing long-term arrangements for the future, at the same time recovering over a month-to-month basis. So that is a way of actually making sure you bring down the costs. And once you have the internet problem solved with all the infrastructure issues resolved, now you can focus on providing other value-added services. And the NREN with other partners would then be able to provide all these services that are needed to enhance teaching and learning in a typical African university. So you realize that this is what is needed in order for the youth and other lecturers and professors, lecturers and academicians and researchers able to provide all the services you need. But this cannot be done without having the solid backbone infrastructure that is needed to ensure that this works. Pardon? Yes, and basically that's actually the last slide. Thank you very much.
So we thank you very much. Have you allowed questions? Oh, okay. So, but before that, I'll just make one last statement that we want to have the vice chancellors get involved, especially in setting up the boards for the NRENs. And like we explained, it must be experts-based. So we want people who are experts in the field of administrating networks to be part of the board so that they can now direct the activities of the NRENs. And the situation where people work in government institutions and work as part-timers working for the NREN does not also help us, because the situation should be such that there's a full complement of the staff. It gets to a point where you might need to run a 24-hour service. So how do we get people who are part-timers to run a 24-hour service for you? So this is one of the reasons why we want to have the vice chancellors within the countries get involved in making sure that the boards are selected well, and the boards would make sure their NRENs are working well. We have about how many minutes of questions and answer? Okay, right. So if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to learn more about GREN. In Nigeria, you have the NGREN also, and it is situated at the National Regulatory Agency, the National Universities Commission. And it's interesting that GREN is also situated at the National Regulatory Agency of Ghana, that is the NCTE. So I would like to suggest that NCTA, because of his role and because of his position, can mobilize the vice chancellors, call them to a meeting, and then this presentation be made to them, because this is what they need. The vice chancellors in Ghana are answerable to NCTA. So if they are summoned to a meeting and this thing is presented to them and they are asked to do something, I mean, that it will be easy to do now. Many of them are not here, and they are the people who should call the shots. So I'm thinking that this important presentation should be channeled to the people that matter. Those are the CEOs of the universities in Ghana, who are the people who should drive the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your suggestion. We take it in good faith. Okay, and then we would apply it.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So thank you, Prof, for the suggestion. We'll take it in good faith, and we will do the needful.
Thank you. I think the immediate past speaker has said 90% of what I wanted to say. It's good to know it is coming from NCTE. My bit is on the staff who must not be working in the universities and at GHREN at the same time. From where we stand, it will be very difficult for us to employ somebody and post him to go and work under NCTE full-time. But I believe if NCTE decides that it is setting up a department called GHREN and wants to recruit full-time to run the programs in that department, it will be much more easier. Then with that, they can go ahead and summon the vice chancellors and tell them what to do so that this GHREN can work. Additionally, it will be very much appreciated if we have statistics telling us that in order to set up, this is how much each university in Ghana, private, public, put together, because you have the numbers, you know the universities that are there. So you can work it out and know the total cost and how much each will be able to pay or should be able to pay. So once you make the presentation and you tell us our liabilities, it becomes easier for us to take the decision to accept and to work towards it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Now, I think I need to correct. I made certain assumptions here or certain statements here, which I think maybe you didn't get quite clear. For the end rent to effectively, I showed you the map of over 110 countries that have the established end rents. All those 110 end rents are independent organizations. They are not affiliated, or most of them, about 90% of them are not affiliated to any government agency or university or any other thing. They are independent, but they are supported by the government. So they get funding from the government, or the government can say, look, we want you to do this now in this interest, therefore get this money, and other things like that. Because it has to be able to, like I said, the full-time staff need to be dedicated to ensure that the product and services that you are paying money for are being delivered in the way which should be there, and not gallivanting, doing other things. If you're working for a university and you have a problem, and then a very low, not small, when I say low, small size polytechnic calls up and says, look, we have an issue, can you address it? I don't expect that staff to drop what he's doing for the University of Ghana and go and attend to it, because that's not, so that brings a conflict of interest and a conflict of being able to manage the problems efficiently well. Now, I also spent, in the context of funding, the approach you asked about how much would each university pay to become a part of the service. From what I realized, the best approach, that is actually not the best approach to use. The NREN, as an independent organization, is supposed to look for funding and resources to roll out the network. Then once they roll out the network, they come to your campus and deliver the service onto your campus and say, look, you've been talking about poor connectivity, poor internet pricing. This is a very reliable connectivity on your campus. Try it out for 2 months, 3 months. If it is not what you expect, let us know. If it is so, this is the cost per month for keeping it. That approach tends to make sure that people don't get overexcited about the problem, and you're able to focus on actually delivering the solution to the particular institution. Once that is done, you will now know that, okay, for this service that I'm paying for, and you know what the commercial rates are, it's cheaper and reliable. Because if the universities actually had the resources to build a national network, they would have done so. But then most of them don't have, most of them are struggling, and then already from the map, you're already paying too much for the pricing. So why should anybody come and stand in front of you and say, pay more to pay less later? That to me, doesn't sound the person knows what he's talking about. Rather, if you want to solve the problem, you have AAU to talk to, you have donors to talk to, you have governments and other donors to talk to. Use that energy to get the resources you need to fix the problem, and then deliver it to the campuses that need it the most. That's the way I would say we will address it.
And then let me add a little more. You see, people have the perception that when we say join the NREN, it means extra costs, building extra infrastructure and all that. But the point is that we are not asking that you build more infrastructure. You have the infrastructure already existing in most of the universities. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to get you to connect to a network or a service provider who would make you pay just about 10 to 20% of the existing commercial rates. And most of the institutions, the NRENs, are supposed to be formed, like you said, independently, not by the NCTE. Prof's suggestion was that we should get the NCTE to bring the vice chancellors together so that they will get to know these NREN services that are available, and then they would either latch onto it or they would decide otherwise. So that is what Prof, I think, Prof, that's what you were suggesting, that we do the presentation, we let NCT bring all the vice chancellors together, then we will do the presentation to them. We would try to get that organized, and then we do the presentation to them. But for others who are not from Ghana, Prof talked about NGNREN, that is Nigeria. We will try to see if we can roll out the same models to them so that they get to know the benefits of becoming or supporting their NRENs, and then we will move forward on that. I think our time is up. We will be available if there are 3 questions, but I think time, yes. So if there are any other questions, we are available, you can see us, and then we will discuss the issues. Thank you very much for your time.
I think we can do it better for Mr. Benjamin Eshun and Mr. Abednego Quality. Thank you so much for the presentation. we'll move straight to the panel discussion this morning. And like I said before the presentation, we are going to have the senior management of the Association of African Universities discussing AAU and the journey after 51 years. And to moderate this session, we are privileged to have the Communications and Publications Officer here at the Association of African Universities in the person of Mrs. Felicia Kuagbedzi. Shall we put our hands together for our moderator? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwesi. Good morning to you all. So the topic for our session this morning is the AAU and Higher Education in Africa. The Association of African Universities is actually the apex higher education body on the continent. We are charged with the mandate of trying to improve the quality of African higher education. And as my colleague said earlier, this panel discussion is really trying to create a platform for us to engage with the senior management team of the AAU to try to find out what exactly the AAU has been doing for higher education on the continent over the past 51 years, and what should we really expect going forward. So in order for us to just kickstart the discussion, I would like to call forward our panelist and then our chair for the session. I'll start with the panelist, and the first person is Professor Etienne Ehile. He is the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities. We also have Professor Jonathan Chuba. He is the Director of Research and Academic Planning. And just for us to know that the AAU is really continental, it also shows in even our staff strength that we have over here. Professor Etienne is from Côte d'Ivoire, and Professor Jonathan is a Nigerian from Nigeria. The next person is Mr. Maxwell Amo-Hoyte. He is the Director of Finance, and he is a Ghanaian. We also have Madam Nodumo, who is the Director of ICT, Communications and Knowledge Management, and she is from Zimbabwe. I would be glad to have Madam Nodumo sit in the middle. We want to mix up a bit. And then the chair for this session is Prof. Isam Eldein Elmahi. He's a representative of Vice Chancellor's University of Mashreq. He's the representative for the Vice Chancellor of University of Mashreq. Okay, so we'll start the discussion shortly, but before we do that, we'll take the chair's response. Okay, I'm sorry. We also have Professor Faiza Mohamed Osman Mahmoud. She's the coordinator for the AAU East Africa Regional Office. Please let's clap for her. She came all the way from Sudan. Okay. As I said earlier, we'll start the discussion by taking the chair's response.
Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure here to be with you at this conference. And I will say good morning, Etienne, in your language. So, you know, higher education is very important. It's very important when we talk about the importance of higher education, we can talk about many levels. Say at the level of individuals. Every individual, if he has got higher education, that means he is going to have less competitors in the labor market. And that is one of the benefits of higher education. Also, he is going to have more money to be earned. His salary is going to be higher than others. And this is another benefit for higher education. Also, for workplace, he is going to have more chances, more opportunities to be appointed because of his higher education. Also, when we talk about saving jobs, you know, some companies, they save their jobs, they lay off. So those guys who have, or students or who have higher education, they will have less chances to be laid off. They will stay for longer periods at their post. And also, we talk about higher education importance for individual level when we talk about the development. So if you have higher education, that means you have chances to go up the ladder, to get more allowances, to get more promotions, and so on. So the higher education is very important. And nowadays, most of the people, they are not looking for winning bread jobs. Most of the company, they are looking for jobs that which matches skills, matches higher training, and so on. And higher education, therefore, for the companies has a lot of benefit. They have to adapt or take or recruit higher education students or individuals, because the company's existence and high profits for the future is depending on their chances to get more by hiring more of them. Also, at the level of countries, no country can develop without having more higher educated persons. So if we need development, then we have to care a lot of our higher education. Higher education means development at the end for the country, means peace. Higher development, if we have higher development, that means we are going to beat war, we are going to beat underdevelopment, we are going to beat poverty, we are going to beat racism, we are going to beat all these kind of things which is not making people live in a very healthy community. Anyhow, the AAU, I think, has a big role to play for promoting the higher education, vertically and horizontally. And therefore, I just started these comments for them, for the panel, and I leave it for the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for those introductory remarks. I think he has really underscored the importance of higher education, which we all really agree with him. We'll just start our discussion, and my first question is to Professor Etienne Ehun, and then Prof. Jonathan Mbaka and Adam. We want to start the discussion by really trying to get a bit of a background information on the Association of African Universities. What is your mission? What is your governance structure like? How is the AAU funded? What do we really need to know about the AAU by way of background?
Thank you, Felicia. The Association of African Universities is an international non-governmental organization which was established in 1967, 12 November 1967, in Rabat, Morocco. And the mission of this association is to raise the quality of higher education in Africa by fostering collaboration among its members, and also support the core activities of the universities in terms of teaching, research, and community engagement. And this is done through our many programs which gives tools to higher education leaders to play in an adequate manner their role. This is also done through some platforms AAU organize from time to time to bring together all higher education stakeholders to discuss topics and themes related to higher education and the development of Africa. For example, the General Conference, which is held every 4 years, and which bring together all higher education stakeholders of Africa and our development partners. We have also the Conference of Rectors, Vice Chancellors, and President of African Universities, which is held also every 2 years to take stock of the recommendation done during the previous General Conference. So these are some of the mission of the Association of African Universities.
Okay. I think I would want Prof. Mba to also add up.
Yeah,
and then maybe in his
you.
address, he can brief us through the governance structure and the funding sources.
Thank you very much. So maybe I should start with the governance structure. The hierarchy of the association is such that the supreme decision-making body is the General Conference, and which consists of institutions that are members of the association. The CEOs of these institutions, they congregate every 4 years to take decisions not only on the way the organization should move forward, but also to review the performance in the past 4 years, to review the program in the past 4 years, and to discuss challenges that have occurred during the past 4 years, and also to elect new members of the board. So the governance structure is so that you have the General Conference. The General Conference makes policy decisions for the association, and beneath that is the Conference of Vice Chancellors, or the COREVIV, which is a club of Vice Chancellors. They meet every 2 years, and they take stock of what has been done in the past 2 years, and they make suggestions on the way to move forward the next 2 years before the next General Conference. So beneath the Conference of Rectors and Vice Chancellors and Presidents of Universities, you have the Governing Board. The Governing Board consists of the President of the Association, 3 Vice Presidents of the Association, and then you have 11 members, sitting Vice Chancellors, representing the 5 geographic zones of Africa, and also alternate members. So these Vice Chancellors meet every year to review the annual program of the association, to discuss the work plan for the next year, and also to look at challenges that the Secretariat will be grappling with. And then within the governing board, there is a subset of it called the Executive Committee, consisting of the President, the 3 Vice Presidents, and the Secretary General. So they are the Executive Committee, and they meet also once every year, or maybe every 6 months, and they take decisions on behalf of the governing board. So they report to the governing board on issues affecting the operations of the association. And then at the base of the hierarchy is the AAU Secretariat. The AAU Secretariat implements the day-to-day activities of the association, and is headed by the Secretary General, who is the CEO of the association, and who reports to the board. So that is the governing structure. The governing board appoints the Secretary General, and also appoints the principal officers of the association. So their term is for 4 years, and it's renewable once. Okay. Just to end, I would like to talk about the funding for the association. There are 3 streams of funding for the association. The first is through the membership dues. All members of the association pay an annual subscription of between 2,500 to 3,500. 2,500 for associate members, institutions that have not graduated the first cohort of students in their institutions. And then associate members, those that have graduated the first cohort, full members, those that have graduated the first cohort of students, and also whose student population is greater than 2,000. So they pay this amount. So that is one source of our income, membership dues. We let them know why they should be paying the dues, because we use it to service them. The second source of funding is through the projects that we run. The projects are coming through a number of avenues. We may write competitive proposals and it will be funded. Development partners may approach us to implement one or two projects. But all these projects are consistent with our strategic plan. So they serve to enhance what we are doing, supporting higher education institutions in the implementation of their core functions. So that is the second and the most important source of our funding. About 70% of our funding comes from the project that we run. And because that we run this project very well and professionally, development partners keep on coming back to us. And the third source of funding, you may call it other sources, maybe through internally generated funds, when we do AAU programs, when we do AAU workshops and other events that generate funding. So these are the three streams of funding that help AAU to survive these 51 years. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Mba. On the question of the funding, I think we have our Director of Finance here. Just in case Prof. Mba might have forgotten anything you want to add, I would open the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Felicia. I want to elaborate on what Prof. Mba indicated. For the sources from our partners, you may want to group it into bilateral and multilateral sources of funding. With the bilateral ones, we are looking at governmental agencies. For instance, the Swedish International Development Agency has been one faithful partner of the association for over 3 decades. We also have multilateral agencies who support us, like the World Bank, which fund some of the projects that we do. The recent one being the Africa Centers of Excellence. We also have, how do we call it, a regional continental body support. The African Union also supports the association. Then we have the regional economic bodies like ECOWAS also supporting us in some of the programs that we do in terms of some of the scholarships that we run, among others. We have various African governments who also support. Notable among them is the government of Ghana and all other African countries who host our conference of rectors, vice presidents, vice chancellors, and presidents of universities and general conferences. As a norm, whichever country hosts these conferences is hosted jointly by a member of AAU and the government of their country. They normally contribute about 50%. So there's a lot of governmental support for the AAU. And where the AAU is also resident, we have the government of Ghana also being very supportive. As a host country, it also supports the association. I also want to clarify something. For the membership fee, it's $3,000 for the full members.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. For our next topic of discussion, we want to look at the membership of the AAU. Who are your members? How many members do you have? And how does an institution become a member of the Association of African Universities? If Ms. Nodumo Dhlamini can respond to this question.
Thank you, Felicia. Currently, our membership stands at 400 universities. We keep getting applications for membership every day. And the process is that if a university wants to be a member, they go online to our website. They apply for membership by completing an online form. After they complete an online form, we synthesize the applications every quarter. we send them to the board subcommittee, which reviews the applications on behalf of the board. Then the full board meets once every year to look at the applications and confirm the universities that would have met the requirements. So as they apply online, there's certain information that's required, which they must attach, most important of which is proof that they are accredited in the country where they are coming from. And then after they've been admitted by the board, the General Conference comes to ratify the members, even though this happens every 4 years. But there have been instances in the past where a university is at one, I hear, was admitted, but the General Conference had issues with that admission. So it shows that the highest governing organ of the association is actually the General Conference, because it still checks what we would have done over the past 4 years. I'm not sure if I've answered you properly.
Yes,
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. We are aware that the AAU Secretariat is actually hosted in Ghana by the government of Ghana. But beyond the Secretariat, which is present here, we want to know whether there are other regional offices. Can someone respond to that briefly, and then I can ask the next question? Yes, if
you want to
Faiza, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Before speaking about the establishment of a regional office, I want to take you in a tour, in a historical tour, about the establishment of Association of African Universities. Because recently, before a year until now, we find many documentary issues which can showing the actual establishment of the AAU. So all people here is speaking about the period from school age to graduations. But I will talk from birth to school age and coming back after graduation in East Africa Regional Office.
Okay.
So our story started in 1962. At that time, UNESCO implement or conduct a conference for the development of education in Africa in general. And as that conference was attended by all head of higher education in Africa. So as beside the meeting, they discuss the issue and actions for the development of the educations. The head of African institution at that time make a side and meet outside conference framework. They decide if this issue need to be implemented in African content, they think about the platform and the way they can formulate a body which can organize everything. And the idea for that issue coming up from Professor Nazir Dafa'Allah, Vice Chancellor of University of Khartoum at that time. So they think and they established a timetables to start to implement this activity and to translate into reality. They think about the formulations or conductions of a general conference to discuss this issue first, and then to establish constitutions. Unfortunately, we find the original of the constitution which had been established at Khartoum with Arabic and English language. And we have photos for all meetings and even bank statement for the payment of any issues now. And we plan to put it in a museum as a historical issues. We start to work in that. So in Khartoum, they plan to conduct the first meeting, and the first meeting had been implemented at University of Khartoum at 1963. And at that meeting, they think about the establishment of the constitutions and the official formation of the organization to work under the constitutions. So after the discussions and meeting, they plan for another general conference at which they can establish the organization formally. So they plan to conduct that conference at 1964, and it's supposed to be in Nigeria, but due to some political issues, it has been postponed. And it will plan to be in Egypt and also postponed due to war between Arab and Israel at that time. At the end, Morocco, representing by Rabat University and Professor Mohamed Al-Fas, the director of or Vice Chancellor of Mohammed Al-Khamis University, agreed to host that meeting, and it was done. At that meeting, the associations had been established, the constitution had been implemented, adopted, and approved. Then, 2 or 3 or 5 meetings had been implemented, 2 of them in Khartoum, also at University of Khartoum. Until 1969, the organization had been adopted and established. I would like to say something that when they constructed and established the organizations, they think about the financial issues. So the Vice Chancellor of interim committee at that time, Mohamed Al-Fas from Morocco, has delegations to communicate with African on Association of African Unity, the name of African Association at that time. Okay. So they communicate, and through them, a communication happened to all governmental or vice minister at all country in the regions. So Sudan, Nigeria, Tanzania, and other 3 countries has initiative to support the association at that time. And Sudan provide 50,000 Sudanese Guinea at that time, which equivalent to 50,000 sterling at that time, and it's a huge money. This due to the communications between Professor Nazir Dafa'Allah, Vice Chancellor, and the Vice Minister of the Sudan, and they gave the first donations for the associations, financial associations, was received from Khartoum, or from University of Khartoum, or Sudan Government General. And then the Sudan government agreed to host the regional office and to provide them with all diplomatic benefits and to give him a residence and offices. And I would like to see that University of Khartoum hosting Association of University for 2 years for the building near Al-Shariqa Hall, if body knows. That was the office there. And Professor Nazir Dafa'Allah was a Deputy Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor was Mohamed Al-Fas from Morocco. So after that, or after the establishment, as I said, there is something must be happen after 1969, that they think about the what do you call it, the hosting of the associations, the permanent hosting of the associations. And a general conference also had been conducted, and they discussed 6 African countries gives the ability to host the associations. After discussion and dialogue, they concluded that 3 can be in strategies to be voted who will host Accra, Kampala, and Khartoum. So the criteria for the selection was the geographical area, general environment, and ability to support the office. So unfortunately, most of East and West African countries select Accra to host the office here. After the selection of office, there is a dialogue also about who will be the first Secretary General at that time. So they asked Professor Nazir Dafa'Allah to apply for that post, but he refused because he thinks that he has many commitments need to be in Sudan, and he will not have enough time to stay at Accra to host or to work as Secretary Generals. This is general historical backgrounds because this history had been neglected. It's not appear everywhere. Actually, people started from Morocco, and Morocco conference is a middle stage. So the issue started from 1962 at UNESCO, and it started from the first conference which had been implemented at Khartoum. Okay. So In between, I think the associations had been established and the constitutions, and I have the original. This is the original copy of the constitutions, which has printed in Khartoum University Press. We have it with English and Arabic also. Okay, after the establishment and constitutions, so the association takes the role and implement its activity for the last 50 years. As I said, this is the graduations. We come back for both graduations. So we share our ability to host the East Africa Regional Office. So a long steps and a long issue had been implemented, and we based on the general items which appear in the constitution that the associations have the right to establish 5 regional offices according to African Union strategies. So according to communications and willingness of University of Khartoum and support from our governments, we established and operate the East Africa Regional Office, and that was done in 14th of March this year in a formal ceremonies on that, and we signed memorandum of understandings. And I will say that the regional office will hold the same strategies of AU office, and we will plan to expand and to fill the gaps. For example, since the association had been established before 15 years, they're supposed to work with 3 languages, French and English, but Arabic is not expand among the other 3 languages. So one or other benefits of our office, so we raise up the issue of Arabic language to be the one of the 3rd formal language used in AU. So we start and translate all the document into Arabic, and we plan to implement different programs in Arabic in order to help underdeveloped country and those working with Arabic language to achieve the international agenda and strategies for the development of higher education in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Faiza. I think at the round table yesterday it was mentioned that there's actually a very good library, and in terms of history on African universities and higher education and even AAU, Sudan was really the right place to go. And I think you've really represented this very well. We've heard most of the things that we even didn't know. You are really a clear example of having the Sudan library with us right here. The Secretary General would add up to that.
Yes, I think the history of the Association of African Universities continues while in Ghana. After Ghana won the bid, the association was established in Ghana in 1971. And the first office was in University of Ghana, 1971. 1972, the office moved to State House at the 7th floor of State House in Ghana here. And in 1991, there was a very big meeting of non-aligned countries. And there were works to be done in the building, and AAU was moved to Jauru, a residence of 1-store residence, where they moved the Association of African University from 1991 to 2017, where we moved to this building. So this is all the tracks of AAU since inception. But since 2017, the board has tasked the Secretariat to set up, to establish some regional offices in the other 4 regions of Africa. So we started with the East Africa Regional Office in Khartoum, and steps have been taken to also establish the North Africa Regional Office in Cairo. And from there, we will also establish in the two remaining regions of Africa, I mean Southern Africa and Central Africa.
Okay. Thank you very much. My next question, Profumba wants to add up.
Yeah, sorry, moderator, before you ask your next question, just to give a footnote to what my boss has said. The essence of establishing these regional offices is to promote the visibility of the association, to bring our services closer to our stakeholders, to enable them to fully appreciate what we do, and for them to know more about what they can benefit from associating with AAU. So the regional offices establishment is simply to bring our services closer to our stakeholders. And it is very interesting and fitting that Professor Faiza's narrative fits into the whole scheme of things. And the choice of Sudan was not actually accidental. I think history would have judged us very wrongly if we have not gone to Sudan. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Faiza, SG, and Profumba, for giving us all that background and historical context of the Association of African Universities. I would like to go to Ms. Nodumo Dhlamini. In your earlier submission on the membership of AAU, I think you mentioned that the AAU has about 400 universities. Now, my question is, what is the AAU doing to bring all the other universities across the continent under its umbrella? Because there are thousands of universities spread across the continent, but AAU has only 400 as membership. What is it doing to bring all of these under its umbrella? Or why are the other universities not part of AAU's membership?
Thank you, Felicia. I think it's important to note that we admit accredited member universities, and we admit universities who are interested in joining the association, so we don't force universities to join the association. Concerning maybe why are there 400 and why are 2,000 not yet members, my own personal view is that we need a balance. We need to be able to design services that make it attractive and useful for 3,000 universities in Africa to join us. We must align this strategy for encouraging more universities to what is in it for them. And not just say join us, but what is really in it for them. Okay. And then I think there are some products or services that we can expand on, which will make it easy for 3,000 members to join us. Okay. One of them is the TV program that we've begun, because it has a wider reach. The AAU TV has a wide reach. So if universities get to know about the TV station and that it has a viewership of 10 million people, many universities will want to join us so that they can advertise their programs so that they can be visible through the TV station. The other program that I think we can work on, which can bring in more members, is the database of African theses and dissertations. Universities need to have their research outputs visible. So if we promote the DATAT platform, I imagine that more universities in Africa will see more value for being a member of the association. The third and the last one is it's not that there are not other strategies, is the regional offices strategy. Since we've begun it and we have an office in East Africa, we will have one in North Africa, one in South, one in Central. That strategy will ensure that we become relevant, we become visible. Most of the universities will join because, for example, University of Khartoum will run capacity building programs. And University of Khartoum will send a surveys to universities and say, what are your challenges in terms of capacity building? The universities will respond, and University of Khartoum will deliver the capacity building programs. The universities will then say, yes, I will pay the $3,000 annually because I understand what is in it for me. That is my view, Felicia.
Okay.
Can I sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just to add to what the Director of ICT has said, I think AAU is relevant. AAU was established in 1967, and to date, it has been in existence. There are few organizations that have survived what AAU has gone through. You see, this is an organization that has survived not on government subvention, but because of its ability to deliver results. AAU was established to support what African universities do in their core functions. It has been doing that to date, and we continue to do that. So AAU is relevant, and we continue to expand and improve upon our relevance to our higher education community. It is true that we want a situation whereby all of our membership will have one or two things to gain, but we provide a platform where all of them come together to discuss issues affecting African higher education. We hold every 2 years a conference where academics come together, present scientific papers, and we sponsor those papers that have been peer-reviewed and selected for them to come and present papers. So membership gain a lot from AAU. We hold a number of events, including workshops, where subsidies are provided for participation. Sometimes we pay full burden. We invite our members who are in good standing, you see, to patronize some of these services. We hold leadership development workshops. We hold management development workshops, and our members are asked to come, and they come. How much do they pay every year? 3,000, 2,500. But when we hold an event, we sponsor a participant, we pay the airfare, we pay the feeding, we pay the accommodation, and we also provide other services to the members who participate. So, but at the end of the year, there is only 3,000 they give us. So our members benefit. We provide a platform whereby they compete on an equal basis for the services we provide. So our members benefit from what we do, and AAU is relevant. Thank you.
Okay, so beyond what Prof. Mba has enumerated in terms of benefits, what other benefits do universities stand to get by joining the AAU, or what exactly are universities missing out by not being members of the association? If Mr. Amo-Hoyte can add up.
I would describe the AAU as an elite club which all higher education institutions should join. Critically speaking, the benefits that they get actually far outweighs whatever payment that they make in terms of membership dues and so on and so forth. There are so many benefits. We have what we call the mobility programs, where we host what we call staff and student exchange. We provide scholarship or grants for PhD and master's degree students. We also provide grants for staff exchange, where universities may request for special expertise, which is not resident in their university or country, and we pay for their board, or we contribute by way of grants. to support their stay in the country that we are looking at.
Internship.
We also provide internship for students. And these are things which we continuously do. And this is typical of the association. One thing I also say is being the apex organization and being affiliated with the African Union, we are actually designated as the implementing agency for the African Union on issues of higher education. So we sign cooperation arrangements, usually on a decadal term, every 10 years, where we implement for the African Union their higher education strategic plans. So we are currently doing, I think we are doing the third one now, which is a continental education strategy 2016 through to 2025. So AAU has been designated as a coordinator for this cluster. And there are a lot of things that we undertake, under this so-called cluster for higher education. And some of the things that we do is promoting harmonization and quality assurance activities on the continent, promoting networks development, mobility, and research, promoting Africa Centers of Excellence, and so on and so forth. Actually, the World Bank designated the AAU as its main facilitating unit for its highest ever project for higher education. This is about the $300 million activity. And it started now. We are at the project preparation phase, and very soon it will take off. We finished with the first phase, which was close to about 200 million. We are on the third phase now, which is about 300 million. So the AAU, apart from the benefits the members get, it's a club to be in. It gives you the necessary legitimacy that the institution wants. And we also really don't accept any institution at all. We make sure these institutions meet certain criteria. Central to this is being accredited by a reliable body within their own country. So it's a club to be in, and we are all happy to be part of it.
Sorry. I think if we are talking about the programs that we run, we can throw more light on that, in addition to what the Director of Finance has said. The Academic Mobility Program has two components. One is the staff exchange, where staff are sent from one institution to the other to support teaching, graduate teaching, supervision, and also collaborative research. And we pay for the airfare, we pay for the accommodation, and we pay honorarium for the experts that is going from one institution to the other. It is a competition. We advertise it, and our member institutions apply for it. So it's a benefit they get from it. So when we advertise, a single individual gets up to 5,500, but the person's institution pays less than that every year. In addition to another program under academic mobility, which is the small grants program, we have this program whereby students who are doing their doctoral research work can be supported to complete their research work up to the tune of $3,500. And institutions across Africa have been applying. In fact, some people seated here have benefited from a small grants program. Those who are doing masters benefit from it, and they get up to $2,000. The institution pays $2,500, and when we sponsor 2 or 3 students from your institution, you can see, how much you are gaining. And so every year we do this. Every year, as long as we get funding from development partners, we advertise and institutions apply. So that is a benefit our member institutions get from associating with us. Yeah, he mentioned a number of programs that we run. The Africa Higher Education Centers of Excellence project is called ACE project. It's a project that is designed to support or promote regional specialization among participating institutions in areas that address our common developmental challenges, in areas such as STEM, health, agriculture, and so on. So these disciplinary fields are designed to help us address our common developmental challenges. And institutions that participate in this benefit from AAU's facilitation profile. So we facilitate the implementation of the ACE project. And as he mentioned, it began in 2014, funded by World Bank. And this was, this funding covered 9 countries in Africa, in West and Central Africa. And as he mentioned, close to 200 million was expended. And because of the success of that intervention, World Bank is trying to increase the quality, the quantity, and the relevance of doctoral provision. And so they are increasing it to almost $350 million. And the countries that are participating has also increased from 9 to 12. Nigeria is among, Ghana is among, Guinea, Benin, Togo, Gambia, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and so 12 countries are participating in this scheme. And so the process has begun with the selection of the centers of excellence. Ghana has 8 of these centers of excellence. Nigeria has only 17 of these centers of excellence, and so on. So other countries have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these centers of excellence train students at doctoral level, at master's level, and also provide training for staff who go to institutions to learn how to be able to deliver quality teaching to their students. So our members benefit from these services. So many of the services that we render, our programs are many. Apart from this, the CEDA one he mentioned, we run also the Demographics of African Faculty project. This project is designed to address 2 key challenges. Yesterday we learned about our students graduating from high school and they are not able to access tertiary education. So that is a challenge. Another challenge is our current faculty, our lecturers and teachers are getting older. They are not getting younger. So who replaces them? So the aging of our faculty, as well as the massive number of graduates from secondary school moving to tertiary level, how do we contain this? What statistics do we profile to the policymakers so that they be able to address these key issues? So this project seeks to address this by providing statistics to policymakers that will help them to address the number of faculty that they will need within a specific period of time, and the students' population also that will be needed in our tertiary institutions. And so we also run with our partners what we call Harmonization of African Quality Assurance Initiative, HACA initiative. The beautiful lady looking at me here is our officer, quality assurance officer handling that project. And this project seeks to promote harmonization of African higher education programs and create distinctive, revitalized, and globally competitive African higher education space through enhanced intra-African collaboration. We have been running this project for 3 years, and our members have benefited from it. And because of its success, European Union that is funding it is trying to scale it up and even increase the money. So our members stand to gain a lot. If your institution is not a member, it is losing out. Tell your Vice Chancellor that they should speak to my boss.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I would want our panelists to be quite brief so that we can have some time for Q&A as well. Dr. Faiza, my next question is actually to you. Beyond representing the East African Regional Office of AAU, you are also from a university, which is a member of the association. In which way has your university benefited from the AAU? If you could just enumerate a few in the next 1 minute, and then you can add your comments.
Okay, if we go through the different activities implemented by AAU, I can say that the university can benefit from first the capacity building programs, because all body knows that the knowledge will not stop at one step. So actually, day by day, we are in need of a development of issues to improve the educational issues. And also the establishment of legal issues Yesterday, we speaking about the general strategies and the involvement of different policymakers in. So we have a corner here to involve all shareholders or people who concern with the development of African education and development of Africa in general. Besides that, I think there is a technical capacity building programs. So people or at our university benefit a lot because most of the staff there attend many trainings. And the very important issues, the IT and technical issues. So also they trained and they will train in the database system and advisory of the universities and research. So I'll benefit a lot. But I will add something, very important thing. If we look generally in general strategy plan of different organizations. So the direction of big sponsor and organizations is to support and fund initiative rather to support individual institutions. And I think AAU is a corner and a door from which all African universities, individual university, specifically those who are suffering from some political issues, they can get the fund and they can share the responsibilities and the implementation of any initiative. And I think AAU is different from other organizations. This is not because we are a part of it, but if you go through different union and associations, you will find that this is a different way because they starting from the roots. They build the capacity, they build the system and establish strategies and down to technical issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think her response helps us to know that all that other panelists were saying about AAU is not only mouth talk, but she's actually in the university and she's been able to talk about the benefits to her institution. In line with the theme for this celebration, the Africa We Want, the role of young people, we want to find out how the association has actually been engaging the youth, the young people, the students in the various universities. Are they engaged in the decision making? Do we have programs for them? How exactly are we ensuring that beyond faculty and beyond the institution itself, the students and the youth in the universities are also benefiting from the association? If the Director of Finance can start this discussion, and then I'll call another panelist to add up.
Okay. The AAU really encourages youth participation, in academic activities and in the role of academia vis-a-vis their communities. What I also want to say is AAU also works closely with the youth organization of academia. That's the All Africa Students Union. And we work in a collaborative manner, to give them the necessary support that they need so that they will be able to influence, whatever decisions concern them. Currently at the Secretariat, we have a youth wing who more or less develop programs for the students' body. What sometimes school or institutions may overlook is that the student body is actually the biggest constituent. But usually when it comes to management, they don't really play such a key role. But then, they are needed. You realize that within some university council, we have representation by the students' body. And now what we are also doing is also help empower the All Africa Students Union by working closely with them, by establishing our own youth wing over here, who goes out there and organize programs for the youth to build their capacity. This is just but a few of some of the things that we are doing to assist the youth.
Okay, Prof. Mbabu.
So, just to add to what the Director of Finance has said, yesterday, the Secretary General of All Students Union, All African Student Union, made a statement. Those that were here yesterday could bear us out that the young man was commending AAU for actually exposing the student body to a number of continental initiatives. So the Tuning Africa project, we try to bring the student body into it. As we speak now, The hacker project I mentioned, we are having our final meeting next month. And 3 students, doctoral students, have been recommended by AAU to participate in this conference. And a number of events that we hold, we bring student bodies on board. We had the ARIS last year, and this year we have held a capacity building workshop for student representatives of student unions. We have held one here at the Secretariat. We have held one at the University of Port Harcourt this year. And then more are being planned. The person who introduced our moderator, Mr. Isam, he is our champion that is leading this effort. So we bring students because, as rightly mentioned, students are our key stakeholders. Without students, there will be no universities. Without students, what are you going to do on campus? So we realize this, and we are trying to engage them. We are trying to involve them in everything that we do so that their voice can be heard in the scheme of things. Thank you.
Okay. We'll briefly open the floor for Q&A session. But before we do that, still in line with the issue of the youth, I think one key issue in various countries in Africa is the issue of unemployment, because students will graduate from the universities and there are no jobs. We want to know what AAU is really doing with the institutions to ensure that once our students come out, they really have that employable skill to be able to be employed. And even beyond that, they are also able to create their own jobs. If I would have some brief comments from Dr. Faiza and then the Secretary General.
Sorry.
This character aspect with what I'm saying is that it's a burden sharing strategies. So I think if you speak about the employability, you need to join all the universities together to work. For example, in European countries, there is a relations and collaborations between Ministry of, what do you call it? Ministry, it has different meaning in different countries. The employer or the body which concern with the employability and the educational peoples. So they have planning and programs. How many people from different specialty, and this will return us back to harmonizations and ratifications of different educational materials. I remember in England sometimes they closed some technical colleges and university because due to country strategies and need and priorities, they are not in need for the next 10 or 20 years to have graduations from a specific specialty. It can be solved at regional levels, that it can be in form of regional platform or regional strategic plannings, can be sponsored or supported by AU in to find a way how can the organization get all these people together to think about and to adopt regional strategies for that issues. Unless we will not achieve our objective and we will not reach any endless point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the Secretary General will add up.
Yes, I think there are many things which are ongoing. When you consider the way to build any program by tuning methodology, you will see that nowadays the education should provide the students some skills to enable them be create their own job. This is one fact. The second thing we also do at AAU is to implement activities on entrepreneurial universities. We have workshops, we have webinars series to inform students, stakeholders, and university leaders how to establish entrepreneurial universities. And I think all these things put together should, in a very, very short future, enable the youth be trained better for their own employment.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the last comment from
just a footnote to what they have said. I think AAU has also been doing a number of things to support our students as they finish their school to get jobs. One of the approaches is through our University Industry Linkages program, whereby before they graduate, we make them spend time with the industry so that they'll be able to learn hands-on, get hands-on experience working with the productive sector of the economy. And this has paid off in a number of situations. Many of the beneficiaries of our internship program have either graduated and gone to work at those places, or they have been networked to other institutions that need their services. So the onus is on the students to demonstrate that they can deliver. Anywhere you are, I mean, you will sell. I give you a practical example. One of our students who went on internship went to a place called Obasanjo Farms in Nigeria. It's a graduate student who went to do internship there. And he noticed that they were doing two shifts. They work in the day and they work in the night. And the staff are involved because they had to feed the poultry. And so he did a research and told the management that this is capital intensive, that there is a better way to do it. And he demonstrated to them how it can be improved upon, that will save cost. And they were excited about it, but at the same time they were scared, so that their chicken will not die. So they said, okay, let us go for trial basis. They tried it for a period of time, and they noticed that there was no significant difference between what he has proposed and what they were doing. And so they adopted it. As we speak now, his methodology is what they are using in that farm now. Such a person, do you think he'll be looking for a job when he finishes? You see, so when students are able to demonstrate, anywhere they are, they will sell. And many of them are being supported. The ACE project we talked about, we encourage internship program. So students spend time doing internship with the industry. And many times when they finish, they get a job there, or they are recommended because they build networks. And they are recommended, this is a very good person. If you are looking for a job, this is the person to go for, and so on. So we support as much as we can, but the onus is on students also to demonstrate that they have something to offer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, the floor is open for questions. And I see a number of hands up. We'll start from the front and come to the back.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Ibrahim Yusuf, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Gadarif, Sudan. So I'm really glad to be with you here in AU. This is the first time. And really, I appreciate what AU is doing for Africa. They always talk for Africa. They always speaking about Africa and not about the region or a country. This is something marvelous. Let's stay on that. The first point that I would like to raise is about, let me put it as an accusation to the AU. Why AU is that late to establish and activate the regional offices? I know that these offices are very important. They are the way to shorten the relationship between the universities in the region and the headquarters. So I think even though you are late, now you need to hurry up to establish and activate these regional offices to take their responsibilities in membership and in activating all the activities within the regions. So it is still a question, why you are so late? The other point is that I think also, as a university, I have to have my own desire to come and call for the membership of the AU. But still, I think you have to go to the universities to ask them and to say to them, come here and join us. I think this should be done. 400 out of 3,000 is less than 25%. This is, I think, should not be accepted. We have to exert much more effort to include more universities within the Africa in this very important organization. I think one of the reasons maybe is the procedure of accepting the membership. I think it's also, let me say this, frankly, it is so tedious and it takes a long of time. So this should be reviewed, and innovative ways should be taken in order to try to enhance the membership of the African universities within the organization. The third question is a general question. I would like to know what is the relationship between the AAU and the AU. What is the relationship? If there is, then can the AU do an effort to improve the livelihood or the situation of the faculties within the universities in the African countries? Is this possible? Because we know now that most of the African universities, faculties, are going abroad. They just go to Gulf area or wherever, to Europe or wherever. They don't stay in Africa. This is because of their situation. So what can you do to let them stay in Africa? Thank you for this.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take 2 more people and then I'll come to my panelists to respond. There's a hand up there. He will talk after him. Dr. Makuko will speak.
Thank you very much. I had 2 of the speakers talk about entrepreneurial universities and one talking about helping the youth, to get access to employment. My biggest question has to do with a team. The question is this: what kind of Africa do we want? Do we want an Africa where we keep producing university students who come out and don't have jobs to do? And that is the increasing problem we are having with our tertiary education. Constantly recruiting students and training students, and they come out without jobs. What are the universities doing? What is the concept of entrepreneurial universityship? How are we preparing this student? And what role is AAU playing to ensure that every student who comes out has a serious entrepreneurial mindset, prepared to set up his own business with all the support systems in all the countries, rather than just coming out and expecting someone to employ them? We have played a major role in this development. A lot of the times I overhear parents telling their children, learn hard so that someday you come out and get a good job. Why don't this same parent tell their wards to learn hard, come out someday, establish their own businesses? Now, assuming we had just 20 universities, and every year these universities were churning out sound business ideas that could be turned into businesses. It means every year with just 20 universities, we have 20 new businesses coming up every year. Over the past 60 years that we've had universities, do you know the number of jobs we have created? But no, this is not the focus of the universities. It is just what? Train up students. They come out and they join the unemployment market. The biggest thing we have to do in AAU is to change this. Make sure we have entrepreneurial universities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take the last question, Dr. Makuku.
My name is Dr. Ben Kofi.
Okay, good. So let's follow that. You introduce yourself and then you ask your question quickly.
My name is Dr. Violet Makuku, the Quality Assurance Expert and Harmonization of African Higher Education Quality Assurance and Accreditation Officer. It's a long one. Okay, so what I had here, when my bosses were making their contributions, I also noted a few things. Partly was what he just said, but can I start with the first things? I said that besides the decentralization through the regional offices, there's also an issue of desk officers who may be able to communicate direct with AAU, because one of the challenges is that we realize that even in institutions, whether member universities or not, we are failing to get somebody who can be directly responsible for the communication. And that one has been a major disadvantage to the institutions and to us, because even if we want the membership to grow, we still need people to know what we are doing so that they can also see the reason to be AAU members. So you are most welcome to submit names, maybe 2, for people in your institution who can always communicate with AAU in order not to miss anything. We have a free newsletter. It's an online one, which we would also encourage you to subscribe to, so that in there it's loaded. There's a lot of information, courtesy to our knowledge management director, Ms. Nodumo. We also have free webinars. Visit our blog and see what is happening there. We see that the issue of visibility is very, very important for us. But the challenge is that sometimes even those who are members are not following us. Follow us on our website. Follow us on the blog. And what I had not put down related to the just ended speaker is that we have many, many workshops. Visit our blog and see. Those ones on entrepreneurship, those ones on university industry linkages, we all have, and those institutions which have been attending our workshops can testify how they are running their institutions now, including quality assurance, because everything depends on how we run our institutions. I don't know if the Koforodua people are here.
One of them
Koforodua, sorry.
And one of them.
Okay. Briefly, in a few seconds.
Thank you so much. Yes, I want to also contribute to Dr. Makuku is saying this because she has seen the impact that the organization, the AAU, has also imparted on our institution on the issue of quality assurance. It has really helped me. Sorry, I didn't even mention my name. My name is Dr. Regina Ochedankwa, the Quality Assurance Director for KTU. And the AAU has really helped us. We've been able to soar higher in terms of quality, in talking about staff, students, and then the courses that we even run. We've done so much, and I really want to appreciate the effort of AAU on our...
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We would have our panelists response to the question, whilst we'll take the next group of questions. I would really expect to see some of our students raise their hands to ask questions, because we really have the senior management team here. Feel free to ask all your questions. So we'll start with response to the question. The first question was on the establishment of the regional offices and why we are doing this quite late. I would like to call on the Secretary General of the AAU to respond to this.
Yes, I am happy that this issue has been raised here. Last year, AAU had 50 years old, and the theme of the General Conference was AAU at 50, achievement, challenges, and prospect. 50 years in the life of an organization is very important to take stock of all achievements and all challenges. It is there we discovered that we should go to the region, to the various regions of Africa. So we are now here. We are now there. what kind of Africa we want. If you consider Agenda 2063, you have many strategies. Among them, the continental education strategy for Africa, which is mainly focused on education. And this is why the next Corevip in Cairo next year, the theme is the role of higher education in the implementation of CISA 2016-2025. And this will bring on the same platform the stakeholders, the policy makers, the vice chancellors, the development partners, students, to discuss this theme. It is where every stakeholder should know the importance of higher education to build the next generation of the African student we want and the African citizen we want.
Okay, so Ms. Nodumo will respond to the next question. There was a question on outreach for membership and why AAU is really not going out to knock on the doors of universities to join, but it's universities who rather come chasing us. There was also the issue of the procedure for processing the application. There was the issue of it being quite long in terms of timing, that once a university submits, it takes quite some time before they really get response as to whether they were admitted or not. Can you please respond to this?
Maybe I'll say it's noted, particularly the procedure being long. We'll take it back to the governing board, which is the one that sets the procedure. Concerning why we don't go to universities, it's not true that we don't do. We do it via our platforms, via the website, via the blog, via the newsletter, which is not restricted only to members. The challenge is the resources. We can't travel really to every country, but we also do it during workshops. If non-member universities attend our workshops, then we do issue a call for them to join. But this is also noted. We'll take it back and deliberate how we can improve the outreach in line with the challenge that we have very limited resources to physically move to each country on a recruitment drive. But the East Africa Regional Office will immediately assist us with recruiting in East Africa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There was also a question about whether there is a relationship between the AAU and the African Union. I would want the Director of Finance to respond to this.
There's actually a long-standing relationship between the AU and the Association of African Universities. Sometimes we actually even describe ourselves as an offshoot of the African Union. And in my earlier submission, I indicated that we have cooperation arrangements with the African Union Commission. Normally, every 10 years, we renew this arrangement. So for the current continental education strategy, running from 2016 to 2025, we are the coordinators for the AUC's higher education, the component on higher education. You know, and apart from that, there are other areas which they spell out in a different cooperation agreement concerning issues relating to harmonization, promoting centers of excellence, helping the union, the AUC, to establish accreditation institutions, among others. So when it comes to this arena or this space of higher education, the union actually falls on us, you know, to help execute it for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Faiza, there was a comment about the use of desk officers in various universities in Africa. Coming from the East African Regional Office, how has this worked? Have you really seen an improvement of engagement between members of the higher education community in East Africa and then the AAU through the desk officers approach? Or any general comments you want to make on that?
Okay, thank you very much. Before that, I would like to comment on the issue of Africa We Want. We just want to say that no single organization can do everything for the development of Africa. So we have a big pot, Association of African Unions. Under it, we have different arms. So each arm can be implemented by the specific organizations. So the role of AAU is to develop according to what Director of Finance saying, is to launch the issue of development of education in Africa. And we have other different arms working in different issues. Some work in the development, and some work in the environment, and some work in agriculture and food security. All of them can work and collaborate together to develop and to improve Africa. Regarding the membership, or what you say?
We want to know whether through the desk officers approach, the universities are really more engaged with the AAU now as compared to previously.
Or maybe I can assist.
Yes, yes. I think we just starting now. We have 8 months.
Okay.
We started at May this year. But I think in this short period, we are developed because we planned our strategies from where people are ended. So we start to make some initiative and some advertising issues or advocacy issues to expand the information about AAU among member countries. I can say that in the past, not much of them has any information about the association. This is number one. Until now, people asking what is the benefit. If I remember, I'm paying $30,000 per year. What is the benefit for our university? So our role is to expand information about long-term benefits for each university and institutions. And I think we are developed because as you see from this gathering, we have old members who updating their, renewing their memberships, and we have newcomers, and we have many people on many institutions and many universities willing to join AAU in future. Thank you.
Okay. Professor Mba.
She wants to
okay,
add.
so Nodumo will quickly add up and then I'll come to Prof.
Yes, I wanted to add up that so far since we started the drive for AAU desk officers, we've received about 60 nominations out of the 400 members. So we're still appealing to universities that have not nominated their desk officers to do so. But I think we have seen an improvement in terms of how universities are engaging with us. For example, the reason why we got information about those that are celebrating the African Universities Week is because there's a desk officer in that university who could inform us what they are doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof. Mba, there was a question on creating entrepreneurial universities and what exactly the AAU is doing to make sure that students are entrepreneurial. Can you please respond to this?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Before I do that, permit me to say a word concerning membership admission procedure. I think our procedure for admitting members is very straightforward and it is not cumbersome. Maybe people designated to do that are not supplying the information, because the key thing we want is to ensure that you are an accredited higher education institution in the country where you are operating. And then the documentation should be uploaded. So it is not something that is very tedious, and it is something that helps to give credibility to our association. I mean, if you start admitting everybody, whether they are accredited or not accredited, I mean, you make a mockery of your association. So we want to do due diligence to ensure that institutions we work with are actually authentic institutions accredited institutions and institutions that are answerable to national regulatory agencies. So that is why the process is what it is. And I think maybe we'll provide more explanation if there is, other questions on our membership procedure. Yeah, so I think the question on entrepreneurial university is a rare one. In fact, in my opinion, is something that should be reserved for another day, because it's something that does not concern AAU alone. It concerns other stakeholders. It concerns policymakers. It concerns university themselves. And it concerns, industry. It concerns everybody. If we're able to train people to become entrepreneurs and they do not have the capital to establish their business, where will they start from? And if we train people and they are not able to get jobs, who is responsible for that? So we need all the key players to be on the table to discuss. Our role is to facilitate the process, and we have been doing it as much as we can. That is why we bring them together, and everything we choose for our conference is targeting a particular societal challenge. We have done a theme on graduate employability. We are doing a theme next year, my boss mentioned, on the contribution of African universities to the achievement of continental education strategy for Africa. And so we know, and because of its importance to us, we are doing all that we can to ensure that students, when they graduate, are able to get employment. But that is so much that we can do. There are other issues that we at AAU cannot do. But what we do is simply to raise awareness about it to the chief executive officers. When we meet, bring them together, we'll provide statistics to them, give them core evidence why they should do something in terms of changing their curriculum. There should be curriculum reforms to ensure that students go through the curriculum that will help them to be employable when they finish. But beyond that, government should also come in to make it possible for somebody who wants to establish his or her business to get soft loan to be able to start. You see, so there are a number of things that need to be done to address the very important issue that he has raised. AAU will only do so much.
Okay,
Thank you very
we'll
much.
take a few more questions and then we'll wrap up. I'm told I can take only 2, but I see 3 hands up. So we'll start with Prof here, and then Fred Awa, and the last person.
Well, thank you very much, and my name is Ahmed Aziz. I'm from Red Sea University, Sudan. First of all, I would say 51 years of really good availability of AAU is really a testimony for its presence and its impact on various universities. But I would like to pinpoint 2 issues. The first issue is to embark on what we have really and what we have achieved in the last few years, looking at the network of sciences and the network of education. I think there are national repositories which have been created in every country, maybe. We have one in Sudan. The link and network among these ones have to be really issued out, and it has to be clarified. And planning on that, I think mapping of all the research excellence centers, plus whatever units which are available, I think would be of great help to most of the African countries. I agree that we are dealing with a student who is an international student rather than being quite local, and he has to be addressed in a different way. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can the guy in purple talk, and then we'll come to Fedawa, the gentleman.
Hi, my name is Duke Deborah Afrani, and I am. Yeah, my problem is about making research visible to all audience. At the moment, what we do is that PhD is supposed to be communicated to both the academia and also policymakers, because when you are doing PhD, you're also solving specific problems. So I want to know what the AAU is doing to make sure that findings of PhD is not just going back to academia, but also communicated to the right people who are supposed to make the implementations. Thank you.
Okay. Fedawa, you have the floor now.
Thank you. My name is Fred Awa. I'm a lecturer at the University of Professional Studies. Mine is just testimonies to some of the things that have been said here. Now, on the issue of mobility, the AAU constantly gives opportunities for African academics to go from one place to the other, to be able to share knowledge and also to learn from those areas. But indeed, it looks as if African academics are not making use of it. A lot of times, the adverts are on the website and many do not take advantage of. My university has benefited so much from that, and me in particular. I've been taken to Nigeria and Botswana to teach in other universities. Other lecturers also came to my university. Just to inform you that the AAU has platforms for all of us as academics to benefit from. And students, I remember the ECOWAS staff exchange that AAU was running. Most of you are seated here but do not even take time to go onto the website of the Association of African Universities. There are a lot of internship opportunities for you. And also training. Just in this country, about a month ago, there was student rampage at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. AAU has put on programs that enables universities like yours to train their student leaders. There was one here in Ghana. AAU organized another one in Nigeria last month. Next month, AAU is also training student leaders and then deans of students in Tanzania. The question is, are you logging into all of these? If you don't log into it, then the efforts that AAU is tabling to ensure that we become a prosperous Africa may not be achievable. So as they do their part, African academics, and you also have to support the students. If they invite them for conferences to train them, put a bit of money into letting them go. For if they don't go and they sit back, it will be more expensive not training them, because they'll go on rampage and they'll destroy your properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred, for those comments. I'll come back to my panelists, specifically Ms. Nodumo, since the first two questions fall in your area. There was a question on the end rings. I think it was a comment, but we'd like to hear something from you. And then there was another one on research visibility. What exactly AAU is doing to ensure that the research findings which come out are communicated to the stakeholders and to the policy makers and all the other people who really need to pick it up and work with it.
I don't think I heard the NREN question. I think I will ask that to be repeated. But what I heard is the question on repositories and the visibility of research. I also heard a question on strengthening the networks among academics and among researchers. Then I had the question on research visibility. Yeah. So in terms of research visibility, we began a program called ARIS, African Research and Innovation Summit. We've run it once since I've been here. So that summit aims to do exactly what you are saying. We bring postgraduate students who have done their research to talk about their research in such a setting. And we ensure that the industry is there, the policymakers are there, so that we get to understand what the students have really come out with. And also we give small grants to those that are lucky, because the funding is not always so big. So those that then get the grants, they can use the grant to disseminate. They normally have a budget about the dissemination aspect of their research. Then we also support universities to develop institutional repositories. So a repository is a place where the research outputs of a university are stored. When the research outputs are properly stored by a university, our platform, which I referred to as the database of African theses and dissertations, is a harvester from those repositories. We harvest those outputs and we make them visible globally. The challenge we've experienced is that the repositories of universities are either not there or they are poorly structured. They are not structured in a quality manner that we can harvest from them. Then concerning strengthening the networks between academics, I think that's a very important aspect which we are focusing on now. We are building a contacts database for the whole of the continent. And we want to make sure the contacts database is able to tell us who is who, where, and what their areas of specialization are. And then we want to group the different people who are interested in specific themes to link with each other, to talk to each other, and to work together. I'll also give an example of the Encyclopedia Africana project. They asked us to issue a call so that they could know people who are involved in African history. We issued the call and there were 450 historians in Africa that responded to our call. So we have the database of those people. And can you imagine how powerful it is for 450 people in Africa to know each other, to research together, and to work together? But we need these communities to be properly facilitated. There must be a person behind each of these communities by thematic area so that they keep them energized and engaged and working together. It's easy to create a mailing list, but it's very difficult to ensure that the people behind work together. So we need human beings behind the networks that we create. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. I nearly brought the Q&A session to an end, but there's a hand up, so I'll quickly take that and then we'll end the session.
Good day, everybody. I'm Abdel Fattah Bilal from Faculty of Engineering, International University of Sudan. Actually, in conjunction with talk of Ms. Nodumo, in the 70s, Sudan established Center of Research for Renewable Energy. They were in need of meteorological data. Sudan is a vast country. So they sponsored researches, degree researches, for the student to collect this data. The same idea, we need a database. Why don't AU sponsor researches, degree researches to collect this data for staff measures for number of staff for each university and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I think I want to thank all of you for engaging with the discussion. We'll wrap up by taking final comments from our panelists. Maybe Nodumo, when you are talking, when you are giving your final comment, you can say something about what he just said. So in giving your final remarks, I think I want each of you to respond to the question, where should we expect to see African higher education in the next 50 years? Because AAU is already 51 years, but in the next 50 years, where should we expect to see African higher education? I'd want to start from Dr. Faiza, and in responding to that specifically, respond to that in the aspect of the regional offices. Where should we see AAU in the next 50 years in terms of its engagement with its regional offices?
Okay, thank you very much. Africa we want. I will return back to what Professor Ibrahim from Gadarif State University said. We are working for Africa. We are not working for ourselves or our institution or our country. So hand to hand, everything can be solved and we reach our final objective and agenda. So the participation of us as individual, as country, or as an institution is in any form of participations can help the development of Africa. Please let us work on that, and after 50 years, I think we can achieve our agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Prof. Mba, where should we be seeing African higher education and AU in the next 50 years in terms of its programs?
Thank you very much. For African higher education, I expect the next 50 years, they will be globally competitive and locally relevant. For AAU, in the next 50 years, I expect that it will be a platform where all issues related to African higher education can be sought and got. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Nodumo, the same question, but in terms of visibility and knowledge management.
I expect us to be better connected using technology. I expect us to know each other better and to work better and to take advantage of the human capacities within the universities. And also for the students to know each other, to know the programs that are available in Tunisia, for example. Let's say you are looking for the best computer science program. It should be possible because we are working in a smarter way to be able to have the relevant information, the databases, etc. So I expect a paperless environment, basically, and with people finding the information that they need at their fingertips.
Okay. Director of Finance, where should we be in the next 50 years in terms of alternative funding for higher education?
Good. In the next 50 years, I'm envisaging within the higher education arena that in terms of finance, we should be in full charge of the sources of funding. I expect to see more commitments at the continental level by establishment of funds to support strategic initiatives. At the regional economic levels, I expect to see commitment by the RECs in terms of more funding for centers of excellence, mobility programs, among others. And at the national level, I expect to see more governmental support for higher education and increased participation by private sector providers, increased collaboration between government and the private sector. Within the institutions themselves, I expect institutions to diversify their sources of funding. For higher education, off my head, I can count about 16 sources of funding. But what you realize over here at this side of the world is the emphasis on mainly two sources. Either they are government subvented or fee charging. So I expect the institutions, both public and private, to diversify their sources to at least get 10 sources of income to support their activities. Thank you.
The Secretary General will respond to where we should be overall in the next 50 years. Where should we really see African higher education and the Association of African Universities?
Okay, we are now working hard to be instrumental to the implementation of Agenda 2063. So within 50 years, you people, I consider that you should be in the trends of the real Africa we want.
I would like to thank all my panelists for really leading the discussions and giving us as much information as possible. I would also like to thank all participants for really engaging. At this point, I would like to call on the chair for his final words.
Actually, this panel has been very informative about the AAU. Although they have, we have discovered that the initiative started in Khartoum a long time ago and went to Rabat and came back to Accra, Ghana, but we are happy that all of us are Africans, and at the end we have the AAU. Wherever in Khartoum or Rabat or Accra, we are Africans. That is the main point. And the second thing that this panel has showed us a lot of benefits of the AAU and the importance of the AAU. And actually, I have to say it frankly, this AAU, this bride, has been hiding for 51 years. It should get out for as a beauty, as a beauty queen for all the African universities, to be attractive for them, to get benefit of all what they are raising now. And I think the higher education actually is very important, as they have mentioned. And the Africa which we want is that Africa which is free from poverty, ignorance, and disease. And the people, the young people are the presence and the future of this continent. Therefore, we have to care a lot about their education, about their employment. They have not to get depressed if they have graduated without finding a job or so. And that depends on the development programs which we are going to launch. Development is very important for everything, for jobs, especially for jobs, and especially for those who have got the higher education. Therefore, I think also we have to care a lot about research. And I think the AAU and all of us needs funds. And the funds can be raised by even the private sector or business sector or whatever. We cannot depend mainly on donations actually coming from outside Africa. We can depend on ourselves. We can build Africa. And I think the question which has been raised about the future in 50 years is a long time. We can't make, you know, we can't make any assessment or evaluation for 50 years. Half a century is a longer time. It's a very long time. It should be every 5 years. If we want to change, we must have the minds which believe in change. And I think we will change. God bless Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your concluding remarks. On that note, we would like to bring this session to an end. Our topic for discussion has been the AAU and higher education in Africa. My name is Felicia Kuagbedzi. I would call on Mr. Isam to take up and continue the rest of the program.
Thank you very much. Shall we put our hands together once again for our distinguished panelists, our moderator, Mrs. Felicia Kuagbedzi. Oh, I think we can do better for them. I mean, it's not easy to be up here. Thank you so much. Move straight to the second panel. Okay. Now, I think we're in a democratic dispensation, and so would want us to make the decision together. We have the next panel that is